All right, I'm saving the best for last. The evolution of SARS-CoV-2. This is nice because it's going to dovetail into our next and final unit of the year when we get into detail on what evolution is. And I recognize that that hasn't happened yet, so you may not be familiar with some of the principles of evolution. But it'll be a nice transition as we go into that next unit. And I will be discussing a fair amount of stuff with you later on in class. But let's look at, first off, how did it become? How did we get to this virus? We don't know. But let's talk about what we do know. What are the known knowns and the known unknowns? It was not made in a lab. Genetic analysis shows this. If it was made by humans, there would be a mishmash of other viruses. SARS-CoV-2 has features that we have not previously seen in other viruses. It was not engineered. It is not a bioweapon. There have been some QAnon conspiracy theories propagated by the previous American administration along those lines, which confuses things because of the next thing I'm going to say. It was possibly accidentally released in a lab in Wuhan. And I know that sounds like a conspiracy theory, but it is not. This is coming from mainstream sources. We need to know the source of this virus to prevent future outbreaks. And it probably came from bats in China, not pangolins as we originally thought. The virus seems to fit with the virus we find in bats, and bats are great carriers of coronavirus. They are also fairly immune to viruses. But these bats are in southern China, and this outbreak happened in Wuhan, in central China, where COVID started. What is in Wuhan? A major bat coronavirus lab. Again, I'm not making this up. That's true. Now, I lived in China, and I've done research as well. And China's culture is very secretive and shame-based. Some cultures are fear-based. Some are like some African cultures. Some are guilt-based, like American cultures. Some are shame-based, like Morocco and China. There's nothing wrong with being shame-based. The problem is when you won't admit something and you feel that it would shame your entire nation, and the government is a dictatorship which forces you to stay quiet. And that's what's happened. Many, many times over the last 50 years. And in regards to this, these are facts. These are not probabilities. What I just said, that has happened. The Chinese government has hidden things, they've covered things up, and they don't allow their scientists to speak freely. Chinese claimed originally it came from a wet market. Then the Chinese CDC, about February, March, April, May, 4 months after that, disavowed this. But most of the world didn't notice because the wet market idea had taken hold. At this lab in Wuhan, in 2017, the scientists who worked there reported to American colleagues that they were working with joint projects on that there was a shortage of trained technicians to operate the lab safely. This lab that works with bat coronaviruses, according to the lab personnel who work there, the scientists, they don't have enough technicians there to operate it safely. It's called the WIV Lab. And they reported that they found a cave of bats that might have been the origin of SARS in '02 that has a virus with a spike protein that's good at grabbing the ACE2 receptor. They reported this in 2017. Does that sound familiar? The lab technicians asked the Americans for help. The American personnel in China dutifully reported this to the American government. The American administration at the time in 2017, you'll have to guess which one it was, ignored this. There's a woman, a scientist in China, who is so well versed in bat coronaviruses, she's called Batwoman. She doesn't have her own TV show, but she knows more than the one in the series does. She's more important. She says that she didn't expect to see this outbreak in central China. When she first heard about it, she thought they'd made a mistake, and they meant southern China, because the bats are in the south, not in Wuhan. American scientists don't have access to certain parts of the lab outside of their cooperative projects. They haven't for years. And Chinese scientists, if they go against their government, unlike most countries in the world where science is free to be practiced, they won't only be fired, they can be arrested, put in concentration camps, and so can their families. Now, what people are worried about is something called gain-of-function research, in which the virulence of transmissibility, the ability of the virus to transmit, is deliberately increased. Why would someone do that, you ask, if it's not a bioweapon? The purpose is to help scientists predict how viruses might evolve in ways that hurt humans before it happens in nature. But since they bypass the organism's natural evolutionary cycles, they create risks of a human-made outbreak in a lab accident if a lab accident were to occur. This is the reason the Obama administration issued a moratorium shutdown on gain-of-function experiments way back in October 2014. Gain-of-function experiments are done by labs all over the world. They're not a bad thing to do if you have safe lab practices. According to the scientists who work at the WIV Lab, they don't. So the WIV Lab does gain-of-function experiments like at other labs. And the evidence that they are doing it, there's evidence that they are doing it on a much larger scale than has been previously disclosed, according to the American Intelligence Services. There was a little notice study that was released in early July 2020 by a group of Chinese researchers in Beijing, not at the WIV Lab, including several affiliated with the Academy of Military Medical Science in China. And these scientists said they had created a new model for studying SARS-CoV-2 by creating mice with human-like lungs characteristics by using the CRISPR gene editing technology that is groundbreaking and everyone uses it today, to give mice lung cells with the human ACE2 receptor, the cell receptor that allows coronaviruses to easily infect human lungs. This was done after the SARS-CoV-2 outbreak, after COVID-19, and they are looking to see how this attacks the cells in order to kill people and protect them. But U.S. intelligence believes these experiments were going on long before COVID. Did China engineer a bioweapon? No. Did this virus come from China? Yes. Was it accidentally released from a lab that studies this? We will never know for sure, but there's a lot of good evidence for it. Let's look now at what the SARS-CoV-2 is becoming. We try to predict what it will become next in order to protect ourselves. Every year, you go in for a vaccine shot for the influenza, or you should. That usually has a 66% chance of protecting you from the flu? Because the flu mutates very quickly. And every year they have to come out with new vaccines that are tweaked. And they have to guess what it will be. And they're pretty good at doing it because evolutionary scientists know what they're doing. So rabbits breed much faster than humans. Bacteria breed much, much faster than rabbits. And viruses breed much, much faster than bacteria. And RNA viruses breed 100 times faster than DNA viruses. And SARS-CoV-2, all the coronaviruses, are RNA viruses. And the faster you breed, the more mutations that can come up. And most of those mutations are negative. But if you're breeding really fast, if you're reproducing really fast, it doesn't matter, because if 1% of your incredibly high offspring rate has mutations, and 0.1% of those are positive, then you can withstand almost anything that's thrown at you. Case in point, UK variant. It's 50% more contagious, as I mentioned in the previous video. It's spreading everywhere in the world. It will come to Morocco. It's only a matter of time. Now, the R naught is how many people will be infected by one person. We talked about that in a previous video. If it's below 1, your disease has stopped spreading. It'll still reach some people, but you've managed to control it. And as long as you keep doing whatever you are doing, you're good. If it's above 1, if R naught is above 1, then it's spreading dangerously. One person is infecting more than one other person. The US has never been at R naught below 1. And now here comes the UK variant. I said that some vaccines have benefits that others don't, that you should get whatever vaccine is available. We don't know if Pfizer and Moderna, with their 95% effectiveness, is going to protect from the UK variant. But we do know that the new vaccines, like Johnson & Johnson, do, even though they're not as efficacious. Finally said it. So get whatever vaccine you have. But if we've never reached a point, at least in America, where R naught is below 1, and now we've got a new strain of the virus that has evolved as humans try to restrict it to spread faster, that's bad for us. It's good for the virus, because evolution always works for the good of the organism in question, not for others. So this virus is now spreading faster. Why? Well, we went into quarantine and lockdown, social distance, wore masks, and it was very hard for the virus to get from one person to the next. So it thought, I know. It can't think I'm pretending. I know what I'll do. I will take advantage of those silly people who do not mask and do not social distance and do not stay in lockdown. And I will breed as fast as possible whenever I find one of those, so I can get to the next person and the next person and the next person. And what we need is full masking and social distancing and quarantine within a country for 6 weeks. And then we can go back to school and go back to work with masks and social distancing. Hammer and dance. Lastly, let's look at the future. We are looking at mutations of other coronaviruses in the past, and we recognize that cold and flu mutate faster than COVID. But when we look at other coronaviruses, after an initial pandemic, there are winter outbreaks of COVID. There are winter outbreaks of other COVID from other coronaviruses every year. We predict that this will be happening with COVID-19. And surprise, that prediction was done in the summer, and we had more outbreaks in various places in the world, surges in the winter. We are predicting that we could have a resurgence of SARS-CoV-2 as late as 2025. And as I said before, we may be looking at a reality where you have to get a yearly vaccine for SARS-CoV-2 because evolution is real. And someone might deny it, but the virus does not.